Hi everyone, Janie here. Welcome back to my garden. So I am working on some division today, basically plant propagation, which I have to say I love plant propagation. It's so fun to get free plants from your own garden. It makes gardening, it just gives it another layer. It makes it really, really fun, and it makes it, very, very cost effective if you put the time and energy and effort into it. So I am working on one of my favorite plants today, and I know I say that all the time, but truthfully, this is probably one of my top 5 plants of all time, favorite of all time, and that is Helen von Stein lamb's ear. So you can see over here in my willow tree garden bed, I have a clump of big ear lamb's ear, or Helen von Stein lamb's ear right here. It's beautiful. I love the texture. I love the silvery gray foliage and the soft texture. This stuff always reminds me when my kids were really young. We lived in a neighborhood, and at the end of the block, one of my neighbors had a garden and had this lamb's ear all in the garden. And I remember I used to take Sadie and Shay. We would walk. They were just starting to walk, and we would walk to the end of the block to pet the lamb's ear, and then we would walk back, and they just loved it. And so it just brings back really, really good memories. Then once I started gardening, because I didn't really start seriously gardening until later, I started planting this plant in my garden, and I realized what a fabulous staple it is. Now, I live in zone 9B, and this plant does fantastic in my hot and dry zone 9B garden, but it is hardy zones 4 through 9. So this plant should work for most of you and should be really, really good for most of you. Now, this is different than regular lamb's ear because regular lamb's ear has smaller leaves. It still has the silvery green, soft leaves, but these leaves are a little bit bigger. This one, they get even bigger than this, you can see. Here's this one right here. They get huge, and they're so beautiful, and it's kind of this mounding plant that kind of just grows off of itself, and it's so, so very gorgeous. Now, a lot of people will talk about how this plant will spread, and I do have to say I've never had that problem. Let me show you a seed head over here, or like a bloom stalk. This is a bloom stalk that you would see. And regular lamb's ear blooms quite a lot, and it gets these bloom stalks, and they have tons and tons of seeds in them, and it will spread all over the place. I've always noticed that Helen von Stein lamb's ear doesn't send up as many bloom stalks as regular lamb's ear, and I always just cut them off. And I don't know whether my garden is just not great for them reseeding itself, but I've actually never had them reseed on themselves. But I do want to tell all of you, because a lot of people complain about this plant reseeding itself basically too much, like it's too much of a problem. What I do to multiply this plant is division. And I actually have done it in my last house. I've never done it in this garden before, but you can see this plant in particular right here is ready to be divided. So Helen von Stein lamb's ear is a really, really good candidate for division because it mounds up and then it starts to kind of die off a little bit in the center. And so it'll actually rejuvenate it if you divide it. And then you can take one big plant and divide it into 4, 6, as many sections as you can, and get all new free plants, which is fabulous. And so I'm thinking of next year, what I want to plant next year, and I know I want to plant more Helen von Stein lamb's ear, and I was thinking of even putting this in some of my containers next year, and I thought, okay, well, instead of going to the garden center and spending $8 to $10 per gallon size pot of lamb's ear, I might as well take the time, divide them myself that I already need to divide, have some free plants, and, rejuvenate my existing plants anyway. So that is my plan for today, is to divide some of these clumps, get some more lamb's ear, have them kind of grow in their pots over the winter, and then in the spring I'll be able to plant them out, and I'll have even more of my favorite plant. Okay, so you can see I've only dug up 2 clumps and I've got tons of roots already. You can see right here. So that's what you're looking for, is you're looking for a root ball about the size of a fist, and then you can clean up all this old stuff and kind of see what you're working with. Okay, and that right there is a very mature, very beautiful, brand new plant. And I could probably divide this into 2, but yeah, I think I will. It's already wants to divide into 2. So there you go. 2 new plants for free. These would cost me $10 at the garden center, and I'm gonna pot them up and I'll have 2 new plants ready to plant out somewhere. There's another one and another. Too easy. I'm gonna go get some pots. So with just a little bit of elbow grease and some potting soil and some leftover cans, I've got 4 new plants and saved myself 40 bucks. So there are basically 2 times during the year that are really good to divide your Helen von Stein lambs here. And that is in the spring and in the early fall. So in the spring, they're just starting to wake up and they're just starting to put on new growth. So it's the absolute perfect time to divide them. I find though in the spring, it's a little bit damper and there's a lot of water. And so you have to kind of worry about them getting mushy. These plants definitely do not like to be mushy. They do not like to have too much water, too much wet feet. So you do have to watch for that. During the fall, I think it's perfect because the temperature is getting cooler. Everything's starting to slow down a little bit. And to me, I just think it's the perfect time to be doing this type of work, if you can put the work in to hold them over in their cans for the next season. Now, it is very easy if you have a spot out in your garden ready for them to go. Obviously, it's 10 times easier just to immediately plant that plant into the new spot in the garden. I'm not totally sure where I want them to go just yet, so I'm just going to put them in these cans and hold them over with the rest of the plants that I already have. One thing I always like to remind people about Helen von Stein lambs here is that it makes a perfect filler for your bouquets. If you find kind of a new growth area just like this, and then you take off the old foliage at the bottom, this is a perfect filler for your bouquets. You can just throw in a couple blooms, a couple big blooms like roses or dahlias or something like that, and this lasts forever in an arrangement. And I feel like a lot of people forget about using this one in their flower arrangements. So anyway, I'm just going to continue on with making some new plants. I've got a stack of cans right here and a new bag of potting mix. I'll see how many I can make. I will probably make a mess out of this area, but I'll clean it up and it'll be nice and refreshed for next season. So let's get going. I'm out of soil and I'm kicking myself right now because I went to the garden center this morning to buy potting soil, and I looked on the back of this thing and it said for 1 gallon, there's 17 pots per bag. And no, there was not 17. I mean, I guess it was kind of close. I got 13 pots full of soil. I looked at this clump and I thought, oh, I hope I get 17 plants out of this clump. No, it turns out I got 13 plants out of a half of one of the clumps. That's as far as I got. This should just show you how easy it is to divide Helen von Stein and get so many new plants, and you don't need that many. Like coming over here to this area, I remember earlier this season, was it this season or maybe last season, I planted this Helen von Stein right here in my orange and purple garden bed. And at first I had put 7 of them here. I put 7 pots here. And then at the last minute, I thought, no, Janie, you're overplanting again. Take away some of them. So I only put 3. This is only 3 plants, this big mound. Yes, I need to kind of clean it up a little bit, but this is only 3 plants and they can easily be divided right now. So you really do not need a lot of plants. And this was 3 gallon-sized plants, same as these guys over here. So they are just a great plant to have in your garden, a huge money saver, kind of like a filler, great in bouquets, great to share with friends. They're just one of my favorite plants. I just love this plant. So while I love propagation, I don't talk about it too much on my channel, and there's a good reason for that. And I've actually tried to film this clip like 10 times now, and I'm having a hard time expressing it verbally. But basically, there are some plants that are free to propagate for personal use, and there are some plants that are not free to propagate for personal use. And those plants are usually the plants that are named, that are brands like from Proven Winners or Monrovia or Sunset or something like that. Those plants are plants that these plant companies or breeders have put a lot of time and effort and energy and money into perfecting this plant and bringing it to the market, and they need to get a return on their investment, which I completely understand and I completely respect. So I would never propagate a plant in my garden that was from one of those companies named or something like that. But you can find plants that are free to propagate for your own use, right? For your own personal use, like Helen von Stein lambs-ear. So often I will get comments from people when I plant certain plants in the ground, and they say, like, why didn't you just propagate it? It's so easy to propagate it. And, you know, the short answer is I'm trying to respect the time that these plant companies have put into it, and not demonstrate that on my channel that is public to a lot of people. So I hope that makes sense. I do love propagation. I think it is such a fabulous thing to learn in your own garden, but I also can't ignore the fact that plant companies and plant breeders put a lot of time and energy and effort into bringing plants to us as well. So you know, do you see what I mean? Why it's really hard for me to explain and how to say it. I try and respect the plant companies and all that kind of stuff while still enjoying the act of propagation. I hope that makes sense. But Helen von Stein lambs-ear, it's a really fun one, and I say go for it. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a chance to get in your garden today.